this topic, may I? This topic is called integrating libraries, and it came up because one of the hot shit in VL is just dragging any library from the internet onto the patch and using it. That's what we are trying to sell. And obviously that's just what we're saying, and then really there are problems with that. Everyone has to face doing that, and that's what we were talking about in this topic. So what are the issues people are having with integrating libraries in VL? That was the topic. Not so much talking about specific integrations of specific libraries, but more like how can we, what problems do we see and how can we improve the workflow? So we started on the first day with talking about who has what experience with what library. Different people mentioned different libraries they tried to import. Soon, obviously, we heard the stories of the problems they were facing. And so soon it became apparent that the way you do this normally when you integrate a library is you're looking at the documentation of the library, or you're looking on Stack Overflow. So usually you find some documentation that's like showing an example in C#. And then sometimes it's easy to just translate that, because usually C# function names translate just to node names. That part is easy, but then there are usually some specific C# language features in use that you then have to know how to translate to the corresponding VL language feature or a similar one. And that is an obstacle, obviously, for people. And so there we talked about how can we improve that, and came to this idea that in our documentation we should really offer this entry point of C# language features. So we would have a listing of popular C# language features like tasks, async, using, lambdas, delegates, events, and have that as the main entry point in the documentation. Show some as little as possible C# code, and then offer a solution of a translation to a VL pattern. So that was something we agreed on, that this would be a good way of then browsing such a documentation and finding hints when you're looking at a specific documentation of a library that shows some lines of code, and you can compare that to our documentation and see which language feature applies. And also, it came up that a good learning source, obviously, of when you create your own projects, that doesn't even only apply to integrating libraries, but more generally when you're patching, a good source of learning is just looking at some other finished patches. And specifically in this case, when we're talking about integrating libraries, looking about other libraries that have been integrated. So if you know you're about to integrate a networking library, there might be other networking libraries that had faced similar problems, or you have a specific camera device to implement, and there are already 5 other camera devices that might have similar patterns going on. So that was also a point that we took down, that in this documentation we want to mention specific, like cross-link to specific library projects that have been implemented already. So when it comes to how to use events, then we can say, and see also project X that uses a lot of events. So that was that part, like documentation, how to improve the documentation for people working on translating kind of C# code to VL. Then we talked a bit how the VL side could be improved. obviously demo patches, help patches, which we haven't at all at the moment, and we said that finally now with Skia, our 2D renderer in place, it finally will make sense for us to start creating help patches, because usually help patches will need some kind of renderer to demo something. So we always postponed this starting to develop help patches and demos to this point when we knew we have a renderer, and then it makes more sense to get started on that. Also, we mentioned this already in the forum, that we will have a help browser where you can then search for topics in the demos and in the help files. Then we mentioned briefly just this Control M feature that we have to document VL patches, where you can annotate with a help string every pin, every node, every document, every patch. So that is there already actually, but it's not really in your face, so maybe it can be integrated a bit better, a bit more accessible. And also, we're not doing much with that information yet. We're only showing it in tooltips at the moment. But the cool thing about it is that it is structured information. It is part of the XML file, so we can think about how we suck that out of all the help patches and make a structured online documentation somehow. That's just to mention what's possible there. Then we had a few things more in the UI. So can we improve the node browser a bit to be to allow it a bit more easily to browse libraries? So you drag in a third-party library and you can browse it, but there are some things, some ideas that maybe you can browse more specifically for types used as parameters in certain functions, which would be probably huge lists, but we discovered in talking that this is often you just don't know which node to use where. And if you could search, if you know you have a data type here and you just want to know which functions in this huge library would now allow me to connect that could help exploring libraries. That was one thing. The other thing was tooltips can be heavily improved, obviously. This is also something we have on the roadmap anyway now with the Skia rendering, because also our user interface will now be rendered in Skia, and then we can even render the tooltips and the editors and everything in Skia, so we can create little patches that are drawing the tooltips, and we're hoping to be much more elaborate in the information a tooltip can show, and be more structured. Like at the moment it's just one gray label with thing, and then the idea is to have ways to put little icons, maybe some color there, some lines, just to structure the information, and maybe even have an unfolding tooltip, like I want more information on this, and there are ideas to improve the tooltip and put more information in it, and if you're stumbling upon that was where it came from, if you have a pin that shows an observable, you don't know what an observable is, so the tooltip could already hint at some information, maybe even link to the gray book or something. So building more help into the UI. And generally very important for library integration, but also for every other patching, is just debugging improvements. I mean, we have this pause mode and we can inspect pins, but obviously the IO box is still missing that can display a whole spread and stuff. So I think these are partly obvious things but we came to them and mentioned them, that these are kind of the necessary things to prioritize, maybe to improve the situation of integrating libraries. And then we briefly talked about how we could organize package releases in the future, when there will be hopefully many different people working on many different packs. they have their packs like published on GitHub or any other online repository, and we should have kind of a central automated building that allows everyone to just publish their repository and say, I want to be part of the automatic build, and then we have a build server that just browses the internet for any VL package, builds that, puts it on Nugget, and everyone has access to always the latest build. So we briefly talked about that. There are ideas about that. Also concerns the idea of a package manager that we have to still conceive. The end user can just say, I need a package for Kinect, open a browser, type Kinect, say download, because there is a VL Kinect package there. These things. Then we did a short thing, like, because we understood that people are working on different things already, so, and we had like half a year ago or so, we came up with this idea on the forums to have this WIP VIP section, which was supposed to be, everyone is working on things, and we would hope to encourage people to share what they're working on, or just mention what they're working on even before they share what it actually is. Like just mentioning I'm working on library X, so that other people know that they're working on, and not everyone starts working on integrating the same thing. So we have this category, but nobody was really using it. And then we made this kind of sprint where we said, okay, we are now 5 people on the table. Everyone write down now what they've been working on, and we created this like 10 entries in the forum, hoping to engage other people doing this more often. Just write down what you're doing. And the last point, during those discussions, I want to just mention a few things that kind of started here. Is that Moritz started working on the OpenNerbs library, which will be a nice bridge to Rhine or Grasshopper. So they have this open library which allows everyone to integrate Rhino and Grasshopper files. We started dragging it in and already had a few results reading files. I showed Fabio a bit the MQTT library. There was that, and I think, I haven't seen that, but Johannes said that he was working on Redis import, which is this key value store library.
Database.
So,
fast, really fast.
Yeah. So we hope to see some of these results, and that's it. Questions?
We were talking about expressing C# language features in VL. I just wonder if it's possible or feasible, useful to copy-paste C# code in VL and then just get a...
That could be awesome.
Automatic VL generation from C.
You could just write it as text, right?
Yeah.
Just thinking.
What if instead of patching we just write it?
How can I still be a developer?
Yeah, that sounds great. We should talk about that.
Even better, you make a nice project and you get the VL file.